10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 130. Hey everybody, welcome back into another episode of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. So glad you're here. Just a reminder, you can get all the PDFs to all 130 episodes by going over to our Patreon page, signing up to donate $3 a month to the show. That unlocks every single thing that we've ever done, and this week is going to be extra special. You're going to want to get your hands on the PDF for this week. So go over there and join the over 160 people already showing their support for the show and getting tremendous benefits in return. It's only $3 a month. That is a cup of coffee. And this is something that's starting to happen in today's world, that we consume all of our media for free. And I've mentioned this before on the podcast. I'm really trying to support all of the creators that I enjoy their work at some level. Now, if you're somebody that can't afford that $3 a month, by all means, don't do it. Keep listening to the podcast for free. We want you to keep listening to that, even if you can't support us. But if you've got the extra $3 a month and you feel like shooting it our way, we would really, really appreciate that. Helps us with our hosting fees, helps us with everything that we're trying to do over here at the show. So thank you so much to everybody who's already on board. And if you're on the fence, this might be the week that helps you decide to become a patron. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So this week is going to finish up our series on enclosures. We've gone over what they are. We've gone over a couple of different ways to play them. We've gone over kind of the inner workings of target notes and how we start to get these enclosures happening in our practice. But the original question that I was sent, and the reason why I'm doing this series on enclosures, is because people don't really know how to use them in a real life situation. So what I've done this week is I have written an etude over one of my favorite tunes called If I Should Lose You, and it is just packed with enclosures. This is an etude that's not necessarily written to sound amazing. This is an etude to show you exactly where and how I would use these enclosures, so that by studying and playing this etude, hopefully you can start to hear them and actually see where they would be thrown in over a real chord progression in real life. So let's talk about the etude a little bit. The reason I chose this tune is because it goes from a minor key to a major key. So we're really hitting a lot of the different chords that we would see in our everyday playing lives if we were, out playing gigs or playing tunes with our friends, or just basically playing the jazz language over some of the repertoire that is typically used. This is a tune that I love to play all the time and frequently gets called on gigs and at jam sessions, so I figured this would be a perfect one to illustrate some of this enclosure material that we've been talking about. Now, what I'm not going to do is actually on the podcast go through the entire etude and point out every single enclosure. First of all, that would take way too long. And second of all, that would really not allow you to go through and try to find them yourself, which is the real benefit from playing through this etude, is actually going through, spotting every single enclosure and deciding what kind of actual enclosure it is. But let's go through some of the first measures. So make sure you've got your PDF in front of you and you're following along with me. So this tune starts on a concert G minor 7 chord, and the first thing that I've done in the etude is a single note enclosure. So I'm surrounding the fifth of that concert G minor chord. So you can hear the very, very first thing that I do in this etude is give you an enclosure to look at. Now, moving on to measure 3, we've got an enclosure. We are enclosing the root of the G minor chord. Same thing as before. We've got a single chromatic note enclosure around the root of that G minor chord. Now, in measure 4, I've got exactly the same thing. But this time what we're doing is we are enclosing the third of the concert B flat 7 chord. Then we're moving on. I have a bunch more single note chromatic enclosures throughout measures 5, 6. And now I'm going to move into some different ones. So let's talk about the next section of the tune. And then I'm going to let you hear it. Again, we're not going to go through the entire etude because that would just be laborious to listen to. And I want you to have something to do on your own. So let's jump all the way down to measure 10, where I actually have an enclosure that is double chromatic from above, single below. And that's from the first episode on enclosures as well. And then it just kind of keeps going in this manner where I'm trying to pepper in all of the different enclosures that we've talked about so that you can hear them, see them in action, and all that good stuff. Let me actually play this for you. Now, another thing that I'm going to include for the Patreon members is I'm going to include a play along for this particular tune too. So once you get all of the worksheets, I'm going to include this in concert pitch, B flat, and also E flat. You're going to have all 3 of those worksheets and you're going to have a play along. You're going to be good to go at that point. You've got everything you need to play this etude and then rip it apart and see what's going on inside of it. Now, people that don't have the worksheet in front of them, what I really want you to focus on is, can you hear where these enclosures happen? And obviously, this etude is based super heavily around chromaticism. So what you're going to hear when I play it is a solo that is really probably more chromatic than I would play in real life. Keep in mind, this is an exercise. This is not a transcription of an actual solo that I played. This is something that I wrote out to give you your final step in the education on enclosures. All right? So let me play it for you, and then we'll talk a little bit more afterwards. Okay, so you can hear not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but a functional etude to teach us how to use this stuff in real life. Now, again, if I was actually soloing, I wouldn't use chromaticism as densely as I did in this. But let's talk about how to spot these different enclosures when you're going through the etude and you're trying to identify all them. Well, one of the best ways is to just look for accidentals, and especially looking for accidentals that are bunched together, because that is kind of a sure sign that I'm using chromaticism heavily. And usually if I'm using chromaticism heavily, especially in the enclosure etude, it's going to be one of those devices. So that's kind of the way to go through this and really try to identify every single one, if that makes sense to you guys. Hopefully it does, and hopefully you get something out of this etude. So remember, I'm going to be including it in every single key, and I'm also going to be including that play along that you heard for the Patreon members. So make sure you go over and grab that. Maybe listen to the episode again with the etude in front of you. I think that would be super important. Okay? Now, if you're interested in this chromaticism stuff and you think that you want to get further with it, go and get our brand new ebook, The Chromatic Way. Remember, I'm giving all of our listeners a 10% discount by simply using the code PODCASTLISTENER. And if you go to the website, click on the store tab, you can jump over there and you can find that. It's the first thing that's listed in the store, and the link will take you over to purchase that. That's really going to get you a lot further with this stuff. So if you're somebody that needs to get more chromaticism in their playing, wants to get more chromaticism into their playing, that is going to be the tool for you. We've already had a bunch of people just kind of raving about this and the things that it's doing for their playing. So check it out. Go over there and get on the discount podcast listener. You get 10% off. It comes with play-alongs at 4 different tempos for each etude, as well as demonstration recordings by myself in case you want to learn them by ear or something like that. If you like this etude, you're going to love those etudes. All right, have a great week, everybody, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.